Hello, hi Yvonne. Thank you for agreeing to talk to us today. It's about worship in Reading and your experience of that. How old were you when you first moved to Reading?
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me today, Shirley. And I've lived in Reading all my life.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So I'm a Reading girl.
Yes, yeah, right, yes. And what's it been like for you, your experience of church in Reading?
I think I probably got a different outlook on it because my grandparents were the pastors of the now Globe, and my auntie as well was involved. Ivy Hewitt was also involved with that. So Pastor Walker and Mother Walker and my aunt Ivy, they were the founding members. And from what I understand, they founded it in August 1959.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was to bring everyone together. It was, you know, in 1959, as we just heard, 1948 was the time of the Windrush. So I would say by 1959 they were really looking about somewhere for everyone to meet. So they formed the church.
So this was your aunt and uncle?
My aunt and my grandfather and my grandmother. So Mr. and Mrs. Walker,
Right.
originally of Edghill Street, they formed it first in their home. And when that started, we lived across the road from them. So and I was born in December 1959, so I grew with the church.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you and the church were born at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you have early memories of it being in the house?
Yeah, I have memories of the men playing in the front room. My granddad would be teaching them the guitar, and my grandmother was a pianist, so she would teach young people how to play the piano. She tried with me, but my fingers, I couldn't do the bend, so she gave up with me. So yeah, I very much remember, you know, growing up within the home, my grandparents' home, knowing that there was a lot of activity going there. They'd have the women's evening prayer meeting, so that would be held there. Until eventually they were able to get a hall at the Abbey Gateway. That's the first one that I can remember them getting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard mention of that. Someone else has memories around that.
Yeah.
So did you go to the Abbey Gateway for Sunday school? That seemed to be...
Yeah. And at that time it would be picking up all the children and taking in the minibus and taking them to church. So Grandad would he'd start off really early, and he'd do quite a few trips to make sure everyone got in. And then when he got those, then he would go back out again and pick up the elders of the community.
Wow.
And then by this point my grandmother would have started the church, and usually we would have just started going into our classes, and then Grandad would go to his class after doing all the running around. Yeah.
Sounds exhausting for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And they kept that going for quite a while.
Yeah, they did, right up until they ended up at Whaling Street. But my grandfather passed when I was about 10, 11. And so then the church dynamics changed slightly.
Right.
But my grandmother continued to be the founding member there, along with my auntie. They still had that input within the church. Yeah.
And so when did it move from Whaling Street to, what was the next move after that?
I think that it was even on the Oxford Road, because there was the big church on the Oxford Road, and they were there for a while. I think they went there first and then Whaling Street, or it could be Whaling Street and then there. I think it was the Oxford Road Church was the last, because I can remember then Pastor Joel, who's now Bishop, he now is in the Globe at, is it Richmond?
Portman Road.
Portman Road,
Yes,
yeah. So that's where he is now. And that's where the church, if you like, that's where it ended up, yeah.
Yes, so this church now on Portman Road, the Globe, is the church that your grandparents started by lineage.
Yes,
right,
that's right, yeah.
And what's that like for you, knowing that that bit of Reading was, you know, your family created that, really?
I think for for me, it's an inbuilt. You're inbuilt into it, if you like. I think the two, in my case, are entwined. Because all I can say is the women, particularly, were like prayer warriors. So if I was one of the first children, I would say, that was born into the church.
Yeah.
And I think they prayed and prayed and prayed for me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's a comfort because I've always known that the church is there. I know about someone else, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah, and that person isn't human. So for me, I've always felt a presence, and sometimes I've got myself into danger, and I know that how did I manage that, and how did I get out of it? But I believe it's my faith that carried me through that situation.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit more different than others.
And what's that faith like for you now? And do you worship at a church, or is it a private faith, or what's that like?
It's very much now a private faith. I think my experience and my walk, I work a lot at home. For some people, the TV has to be on, the radio has to be on. But I'm quite happy working in the silence, if you like.
Yeah.
I say for some, and because not everyone believes, or not everyone has a faith, but I always believe that just working in a presence, then I get to hear what I'm meant to do, So that's my faith. I wouldn't sort of say, well, you should be hearing the same thing, because they haven't walked the walk that I've walked. So in that, I'm very strong within my spiritual faith. Yeah.
So is this more spirituality than God, or is it both, or is it?
It's both. I get every morning I get 2 devotionals coming through, and so in the morning that's my time, and I take that time just to read those devotionals and give thanks. But in amongst that, I learned from a wonderful lady called Linda Scarr, Sister Linda Scarr, and she was at one point she was the chairperson of the whole of the Women's Aglow. Yeah, and she worked in D Road, and she invited me to go along, and I went. And what this wonderful woman did, before the shop opened, the coffee shop opened, there was praise and worship within there. And because of that, I saw the powerfulness of actually waking up in the morning, giving thanks, give a little song, and from there you're able to be productive in the way that he wants us to be.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of good teachers around. Yeah.
Yes. And what's it like today being here in a church, given that sometimes you're practicing solo, if you like? What's it been like today?
Oh, I'm always happy to be in church. Normally I'm the one that's really bubbly singing, and the praise and worship, the choir. I always feel like I'm walking into a home. It's my home, and it doesn't matter which church I go to. He always says where there's 1 or 2 together. Yeah, so when you've got a whole church, he's bound to turn up, isn't he?
Yes.
Bringing the Holy Spirit is there, and you get to enjoy yourself. So, and if you've got I always say, if you've gone to church and you come out and you remember what was said in the sermon, then you absorbed it. But if you didn't, then you weren't listening. So I always feel that it takes, you have to intake in order to give out, good vibes, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what do you think of other churches in Reading? Have you tried other homes? I know your family started one church. Have you been to other churches for any period of time? Yeah,
when my granddad passed away, for some reason we ended up going to the nearer church. I think it was the minibus run stopped then, and it wasn't so easy to get me and my 5 siblings A to B. So we went to the local Methodist church, which is where Tesco's
is now.
Yes, that's right. And we went there for numerous years. And that was a church I went Girl Guides in. I joined the youth in the evening, and so was very active within that.
Yeah.
But equally, the church was very active within the community. So yeah, I enjoyed going there. What other churches? The New Testament in Caversham. I visited there a few times. We used to have the times where you got on the coach and you went to the other churches for convention.
Right.
Yeah, so that was out the area. But yeah, and I've done my fair bit going around.
Yes, okay. And just to end with, do you have a favourite hymn or song or something like that from
I think How Great Thou Art, I like that one because it speaks of his greatness, and if you didn't know it before, you'd know it through that song. And I used to do Amazing Grace for the family. I'd sing, and I think we've worn that one out. So,
so you got a new one.
I got a new one. How Great Thou Art.
Great.
Yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Okay,
Thank
you're welcome.
You. Yeah.
And thank you for having me again.